So, hi everybody, it's Kathleen here, and I'm with Orla O'Connor, the very famous Cork endometriosis advocate, one end of the country to the other. And one thing we're going to have a quick chat about this evening is sort of the role of advocacy at the moment in Ireland, and how, we're getting quite a lot of questions in around the cross border directive. And one of the hot topics recently was again around misinformation of endometriosis, and how that sort of impacts on the community and how that impacts on the work that advocates do. And we're just going to keep it very light, and, hopefully sort of stimulate a wee bit of conversation around this. On the cross border side, we will have an expert with us in October, and we're going to bring that, to everybody, and we're going to have everybody's questions answered. So I suppose, Orla, you probably deal with a lot more of the cross border questions than I do, because you've, direct experience of it. So what are you seeing
Yeah.
sort of coming through at the minute?
So I think a lot of the big one that I had very recently was how well there was one first it's like the referrals. So they thought that it had to be consultant. And then they weren't understanding that, if you contact a specialist directly, I mean, I have dealings with Dr. Mitchroy, but any um one that they referred themselves, like self-referred to, they didn't need the referral for. So they were confused as to why they'd need a referral with the cross border. And then it's different from the travel abroad scheme, which is, it's a lot more strict. That they need a consultation for that. But with the cross border directive, it's just the GP referral or consultant. And most of the time, women, choose the GP because they know their GP longer, or their GPs. They just have a better experience with them, and it's easier to get the referral from the GPs. Um, the other one that is quite big is, can they use two codes with reimbursement? And you can't. You can't. That information, I think, is actually at the moment not available on the cross border directive website. But if you contact them directly, they'll let you know there's that one standard code that they use for endometriosis excision surgery. And that's the only one that I've ever known to be used. I'm open to correction there, but as far as I know, they use that one standardized code, the N08Z, whatever it is that they use for endometriosis surgery. And then there's always different questions around that. Like, I mean, I'd be surprised sometimes, and I ask, and I'm like, oh, actually, I don't know. So at the moment, just because we don't have someone from their office at the moment, I keep referring people back there. So I can give them the basics. There's a lot of information on their website, an awful lot. So it's, going through that is hard to even filter through that information, to process it, and then to keep it in your head and make that plan, to say, oh my gosh, it feels like a lot that they're asking you for. But in all honesty, the actual paperwork is quite easy to fill out. It's your personal details, it's your medical information. It's, and then after that, it goes to the surgeon. As far as I'm aware at the moment, the last couple of few women who've gone there, Manuela, Dr. Mitchroy's team, and anyone who's traveled to the BEC quite recently, they know how to fill out the paperwork now. So they kind of have it ready for patients after surgery. So they have it filled out, everything's done. I've asked people to please bring it with you to the consultation, whether you go for pre-authorization first for just a consult and an MRI and come home, but always bring the paperwork with you to the surgeon so you can fill it out together, so you're both understanding how to fill it out properly. Um, but from like, I'm only speaking about Dr. Mitchroy because that's the only experience that I have, but he always uses that code and he knows how to fill out those forms. He's done hundreds of them. So at this point, I think they have a clearer, they know how to fill them out now at this point as well, from that end also.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And because I think that's one of the things that I'm seeing as well, is women are going with very complex cases and
Yeah.
may require different things. And that's something that I think we should clarify as well with the cross-border team, like how that
Mm.
works. If even though it falls under the umbrella of endometriosis, if it's on another organ or if it's in a particular area, like, is there a different way of doing that? So that's a good sort of question to bring up for them as well.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I'm sort of learning from that as well is that it's very important to keep your receipts for everything.
Yeah.
because I think one thing that a lot of people don't realize as well is the cross-border directive. If you pay tax, or have a partner that's paying tax and you're under their tax code, you can actually put those expenses in under your health expenses at the end of the year. And that
Yeah. I
includes
remember.
some
Yeah.
travel as well. Like, so that's quite handy too for people if you keep all your receipts. It's no harm in sort of, having more documentation than what you need. And often, like, a quick snap of the phone for certain things is even enough, as well
Yeah.
too.
And a lot of the girls who just went, what they were doing, I think, was you use kind of Bolt there, which is like Uber. So for any of their traveling, wherever they went, they were able to print out, a full invoice of their receipts from where they traveled,
Yeah.
which I didn't know when I went. But now they're saying that you can print that. So when they're getting home, they're printing that, those invoices and receipts from Bolt, and proving that they traveled from the hospital to their accommodation, the accommodation to their MRI, to their, so they've definitely, the girls have gotten better that way, because I wouldn't have been aware of that, so they have, so there's great tips from them, that have gone recently. I mean, mine is so long ago at this point, I suppose, 2 years, it doesn't sound like a long time, but a lot of things seem to have changed, even in Romania itself, I suppose, that you can,
Mhm.
that you can do that kind of stuff as well. And they've upgraded those systems, which is very handy, because I know, and I do think that's why maybe even people are getting reimbursed faster now, is because they can prove that those travel trips as well, that they actually did that from here to there and here to there.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
definitely, yeah.
That's it. And isn't that the beauty of the whole thing as well, that we're learning from each other and we're learning from
Yeah.
everybody else's experiences, which I think is really, really good. And that's one of the strongest things I think within the endometriosis community, is that we're very willing to share that and share those experiences with other people.
Yeah.
And like, certainly, I know I wouldn't be where I am without learning from the likes of Heather Godone and Nancy Peterson. And certainly there's people at the opposite end now who are just starting on that journey. And we hope that,
Yeah.
they'll sort of learn from the likes of us as well, like, and all the people who've traveled recently, like,
Yeah.
that's one of the ones that I'm really looking forward to, like, is trying to get that session pinned down. Unfortunately, like, a lot of people were sort of tied into one thing and another, but I hope, like, we'll have the cross-border directive expert with us, in October,
Yeah.
and get all the questions, give her all the sort of hot topics that we have for her as well. And I
Yeah, and
suppose,
that's helpful for them too, because it even makes their job easier, of how organized a patient is, and has everything that they need, so that their job is easier on their end, and then everybody's job works quicker, to get reimbursed for their job on their side. They're overworked and understaffed as well. So it's, it makes their job easier to just say, okay, that's their checklist,
yeah,
and everybody's doing it,
yeah.
properly.
I know
Yeah.
certainly when I was chatting to them, they were saying that they're not just dealing with endometriosis patients, they're dealing with
Yeah.
all patients all around the country, and different
Yeah.
languages in different countries, and different standards of forms coming in from different patients in different countries. And, so it seems to be a real heavy sort of workload, but I think
Yeah.
the fact that it's been used a lot more too, will show that there's a need there for it, and it may improve the service, like, through time.
Oh,
Um,
big time. Yeah.
but yeah, no, definitely. And I think another one that we might actually start looking at as well at some stage, if we can get somebody on that, is the treatment abroad scheme, which is a lot
Yeah.
harder to get approval for. But I
Yeah.
think, again, we have had some women who've been able to travel using that. And I think
Okay.
it's a case by case basis, but that's something, again, that I think might be beneficial for people, you
Yeah,
know.
definitely.
Mm-hmm. In terms of, like, filling out the form and all the paperwork and all like that, is it still very manual, or is there an online submission, or is it still fill out the form on paper and send it in?
No, it's still, yeah, it's still fill out the form, bring them with it, all of that. You still have to, I suppose, because you have to get it stamped, you have to, you're bringing it. Yeah, there's no way that would be handy. I suppose, even from the doctor's side as well, to just email it and say,
Mhm.
I don't have to, do that. The only thing I wonder about, if it ends up digital, is that will forms be missed? Um, and, then you're attaching documentation, whereas, I mean, I'm old school, that I like the paper to say, yeah, that's all there. Here's the folder. I'm going to send all that off, and I know what's in there. Whereas digitally, I don't know if, I mean, yeah, but will that get lost in other countries? It's like, if
Mhm.
they make that digital, it's like, are they going to say, oh, I'll fill that out, straight after a patient's surgery, which is what they're doing at the moment, because it's on paper. I wonder if things would get missed just with it being digital. You
Mm,
know what I mean?
yeah. No, it'd be easier
That
to
would
miss
be my
it.
concern. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, no, you could see where that could be missed, all right. And I think as well too, if you have your Polly Pocket, your folder with all your bits and pieces
Yeah,
in it, it's nearly easier, isn't it too? Because you know where you
it
are.
is.
Then you can keep an eye
Yeah.
on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a good sort of tip for people, and get a nice fancy coloured folder, and
Exactly.
pennies
That's
or
what I
Mr.
did. I was
Price
like,
or
bright
something.
pink folder. Yeah. I was like, bring this and put everything in there.
It's the
Yeah,
only way to do it, like, because I know when I traveled for my
definitely.
surgery, it was the same, like every single receipt, like, was going into it, like,
Went
no
in.
matter what,
Yeah.
like, and,
Yeah.
I suppose you just get into the habit of it as well, like, you really do. But no, look forward to that conversation. And look, I think,
Definitely.
it's one of those things too that, and we've chatted before about the likes of advocacy work and the likes of supporting patients and all that. And, this is
Mm.
where a lot of the work that we're sort of doing in the background is being repeated over and over. And I think if we could put it into a collective resource, get that conversation out there, then more people can access that. And that sort of helps people when maybe we're not available or we're not online or things like that as
Yeah,
well.
certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make it easier, like. And I suppose one of the things that's come up during the week for me, and, I want to sort of get your thinking on it. I've been speaking to a few people and they've been sort of wondering about, the sort of upset that's caused when the definition of endometriosis is wrong. And now this
Mhm.
has come from healthcare professionals I've been chatting to about a different project. And, also from people who may have seen there has been a video online, and there has been another organization which has shared something, this week with regards to the definition of endometriosis and all that. And like, I know I have my very own definite feelings as to why we should have a very accurate definition out there and why that's important. But I suppose, how have you seen that over the last couple of years? Have you seen where the importance of that may be lost, or do you think it still is important that people understand the difference in the definition?
I think they really do need to understand the definition. And when you see it in particular, like you've mentioned that group, and medical professionals aren't getting that information right, because it isn't just about your period, and it isn't
Mm,
just then, and it isn't just when you're ovulating. There's like, even for myself, there was 7 days of the month where I was okay. That's it. So for the rest of the time of my life, for years, it's like, and you're the same as well, like, that just shows that it isn't just to do with your period or retrograde menstruation, or all those things are incredibly important, because we have to, and everybody has to realize that it isn't just a menstrual disease or a gynecological disease. It's your entire body, and it's systemic. um yeah, it is incredibly important, and that does come about. There's always times in the year, and particularly around like Endo Awareness Month, where that is, we're exhausted by the end of March, because you're constantly fighting that over and over again. And even, I don't even know if people are doing it in the best interest sometimes to raise awareness, but if you can't do it right, then it's just a backward step. And like, so many advocates have fought that for so long, yourself in particular for decades, Heather too, so many. And it's so, so important to do that. And I don't think that the medical community, or even the world or the population, can understand it completely if we still treat it as like this stigmatized, hidden, around your period, disease, because nobody wants to talk about that. Even women don't want to talk about that. We know that even from menopause, from periods, older generations, younger generations, teenagers. I don't know if they talk. I don't know if they discuss that with their friends. They don't seem to. It's still not something they talk about. Um, so yeah, it's incredibly important. And if you have huge organizations, what happens then, promoting that and getting the definition wrong, then how are we going to do the right research, or how is that going to be funded into the right research to find out the cause of endometriosis at the end of it all? Like, we're never going to find that if you keep defining it and doing silly research, that puts, endometrium in rats, like, stuff like that. Those are the research projects that you'll keep getting, because we have the definition wrong. Well, we
yeah,
don't have the definition wrong, but I mean, the rest of the people do, and that's the problem. And it
I
is
know.
important. It's very important.
It is, and I think for me, you know, certainly, like, I know, like, some of the early research that I would have done, and it was all the papers where it was endometriosis was the same as the endometrium, and it
Yeah.
behaved in the same way. And then we learned, and we had to shift our thinking very quickly and start adapting around that. But one of the very early things I found around that was, and it scared me, that women were making treatment decisions based on this. And that was the information they were
Mm.
getting from their clinicians. So clinicians were believing that, the uterus was the source of endometriosis. So it's quite logical to think, oh, well, if that's the source of endometriosis, let's take it out.
Mm.
And like we know now that, we've had women who've had their uterus and their ovaries removed in their, mid 20s to, sort of mid 30s, taken out in the
Mm.
absolute prime of their life, putting them into, very early menopause, putting them into a lifetime of a lot more suffering because they now have endometriosis. They may not have gynecological organs, and they go from general surgery back to gynecology, back to general, and nobody wants them. They're in this medical waste ground where they're completely lost. And I think that's one of the things that sort of, certainly in the conversation I've had this week around this, was that, if treatment decisions are based on misinformation, there's very, very little way back from that. And, be that around prescribing somebody pregnancy, or be that around prescribing somebody a hysterectomy or an oophorectomy, and all of those things have their place in other parts in our lives. But certainly where you have that situation where somebody's led to believe that if the uterus is gone, your disease is gone. And, it is a straight and logical thinking like that for, a lot of the information that's
Yeah.
out there. And that needs to change. And again, too, like you say, a lot of the research that's been done, like if we're looking at the wrong thing, we're just wasting money and time and effort and people's hopes as
Yeah.
well, you know?
Yeah, and it's people's lives, and and you're just, and there still is that thinking in Ireland that a hysterectomy, women believe that, like
Mhm.
they still believe, if I remove my uterus, everything will be okay on my ovaries.
Mhm.
But they're also, then they're not informed about what happens after that. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's just the menopause, but that's a whole other minefield, and not
Mhm.
even just that, but then you have osteoporosis, you have cardiovascular diseases, you have all of that accompanying that. And even, they're not even aware of those issues after you have a hysterectomy.
Yeah.
And then should your ovaries be removed if they're healthy, so you don't go into menopause, like all of those things. It's like, in Ireland, they're still performing total hysterectomies and oophorectomies at the same time. It's not
Mhm.
just, oh, if your ovaries are healthy, keep them. It's like, no, no, if we're going to take everything, just take it all. And then have you told them how they're supposed to manage menopause after that? Like that you immediately go into it. It hasn't been a natural
Mhm.
progression into that you're immediately smack bang into menopause, and how are you supposed to cope with that? And then there's no care for that, or
Mhm.
there's no information about that.
Yeah.
So that's, and then that's the other part of your life, that you still are going to live through, another 30, 40, however many years. Some women much longer if they're having them earlier in their life.
Mhm.
And they're still not living the best quality of their lives. That's,
Absolutely. And I think there's a huge fear of treating women who've had or have endometriosis, after the menopause as well. There's a lot of
yeah,
fear around the use of HRT and appropriate use of HRT. And again, it's a lot of trial and error. It's a very individual disease. And, what might work for you might not work for me. And, it does
yeah,
take a wee bit of trial and error and working with a good GP or good gynecologist or a good menopause specialist. But certainly around, the treatments, I think it boils down to informed consent as well, doesn't it? You
yeah,
can't, a hysterectomy may be the best decision. Like, for me, it was the best decision
yeah,
because I got rid of like adenomyosis, fibroids, a septum, and all
yeah,
other,
same. Yeah,
weird and
yeah,
wonderful things. But the blanket thing that I was told when I was like, I think it was probably about 17 or 18, was like, well, you need to get pregnant. And then whenever you're done having children, you can have a hysterectomy and have your ovaries removed and just get it all cleared out. And I was like, that sounds a bit simple.
yeah,
But I think again too, like I think we're starting to see the shift in the narrative in menopause here. And, I suppose all we
yes,
can do is keep pushing and hoping that somebody somewhere, picks up the right information, that it sticks, and that we can, you know, entrust the younger people that are coming behind us, with this accurate information, and that they can run with it. Because we've certainly battled over the last number of years to try and make sure that it's out there. And all it takes sometimes is one very bad media article or one particular TV show or whatever it happens to be. And it's sort of heartbreaking because you sort of think, oh, this is like decades of sort of fighting against this and decades of correcting posts on social media. Um, but then you sort of think you might get an email or a message in that night and somebody's, done their reading. They've had a wee bit of a think about some of the things you said to them and they've accessed good, positive treatment for them. That might be surgery. It may be that they've had them marina fitted, or it may be whatever treatment path they choose. But again, I think when we're given all the information, we can make those sort of choices. But yeah, I think it all starts with accurate information. And, that's
Oh,
one of my
definitely.
biggest bugbears, isn't it? Misinformation.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the biggest headache all the time,
It
and we're,
is.
I suppose there's more people now, like we've seen it too, even in Ireland. I suppose, like, I think the Irish endometriosis voice hasn't been so loud before,
Mhm.
but I do feel like I really feel this since like probably the last Endo March that we were at. Like since then, I feel like the advocates and their voices are getting louder for
Yeah.
Ireland and bigger, and I think that they know so much more. And they really are educating themselves, like they're finding the right resources and they're really pushing for themselves. Even if they
Mhm.
can't get to the right treatment right now, they know what they have to do and they know what their plan should be. And they're just managing at the moment, but eventually they'll get there.
Yeah.
And and they're stronger to do that. They're empowered to say stuff to their gynecologist or their GPs and to push for that and to
Mhm.
say, no, this isn't working for me. I want to try this instead. I want to try different management. And they still know that they're just managing them. I think that's the biggest thing, is that they know
Yeah.
that they won't be okay, but that if they can manage for a while till they can get to the right treatment, and that's impressive. Like
Mhm.
that's amazing that they've done that. And I feel like the Irish group of those people are getting bigger, and you
Yeah.
see the younger women definitely that's happening for, and
Mhm.
they know the red flags already. Like I was just talking to a girl yesterday in college and she's 20, and like I've talked to her for a while, but she knows what she has to do. She can't get there yet, but she will,
Yeah.
and she knows the red flags. Like she told me loads of stuff and I was like, oh, you spotted it yourself, whereas before she kind of would have checked, but now she knows what she has to do.
Mhm.
So I do think that's changing, which is
Yeah.
great.
Oh, it's unbelievable because, I think back to the very first Endo March and I had polled all the followers at the time and I was like, do you want a physical march? Will we have an event? And it was an overwhelming, I think it was like 90 odd percent, I think had come back. I went, absolutely not. We will not be seen in public.
Yeah.
Can we do something else? So it was combined with an info day at the time, which was totally perfect and totally understandable. But now there's an appetite for the likes of the Endo March, and we have our date for next year, which is the 24th of March. And that
Yeah.
coincides with the worldwide one, which is great. And, to see people coming out and having the crack and chatting to other people, like it's so important. But like, to see that progression in the last number of years in particular, where women are not just taking the information, they're taking the information, they're sharing it, they're taking the information, they're using it, they're taking the information, and then you can see them in public forum as well too, passing that
Mm.
information on to other people. And like, I feel like a proud mammy of 200,000
Yeah.
women,
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah. I
sort of
bet you
like,
do. Yeah.
thanks,
Yeah.
but no, I think, and speaking to a few people this week on different things like around endometriosis, that is one of the things I think people underestimate, that if you do a piece in the paper or you do a piece online or you do a piece in on the radio or TV, whatever it happens to be, the impact that that has is amazing, because the person sitting watching it or listening to it in the background, they might not do anything with that information there and then. But like I've had people come back to me and say, oh, I read such a person's story in the Irish Independent. Now, it must have been about 5 or 6 years ago, but I remember that story and I think that's what my niece has or my sister has or whatever. And you're like,
Mhm.
it actually does get through. Or they'll think, oh, hang on a minute, I remember hearing you on the radio chat. You were chatting about periods again. I don't know. I think my neighbour's daughter might have something, and it's funny.
Yeah.
It does have a way of sinking into people. You think maybe sometimes they're screaming into the void, but yeah, there's a
Yeah.
huge shift in the last probably 10 years or so, but definitely in the last 3 to
Mm.
4 years, I think it's been great, and people
Yeah.
are very good at sharing the stories and very, very open in that. And I think that's positive. But again, I always have to temper that with, if you don't have the accurate information,
Yeah.
defer to somebody else, and I
Yeah.
think, like, while we can, like, you and I have, maybe quite overlapping experiences or very different experiences in certain things,
Mhm.
but I would always temper anything that I have and sort of say, well, look, if I don't know what the answer is to that, I'll ask somebody who does, or I can find out.
Yeah, same. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And it's I suppose it's knowing that as well in the background too, isn't it? Like, but
Well, you'd
yeah.
always fight, yeah, sure, I have your head wrecked, like, but I'd always be like, oh no, I can't do anything about that until I check with Kathleen, because I'm still learning as well. And like, I only had my surgery 2 years ago. And even though I was researching prior to that, and, I've talked to you and Amy for years, but, like, I'm still learning, and there's still so much to learn about it. And then you'd see something else new. And, we talk to advocates across the world. So you learn more information off of
Hmm.
them. And then you're trying to apply that to Ireland, which is very difficult, as we know, because we don't have resources and we don't have anybody here. So we must reach further. You know, for us, we have to reach further for information or for data or for research. And, we don't have the data for Ireland. But yeah, I'd always be checking in and then double checking that again and then check with somebody else. And you're like, you have to do all that work before I actually share something, and just
Hmm.
make sure that it's right, because you just never know. And if I have ever done misinformation and everything, I totally take that on board by saying, oh my gosh, I was wrong, and
Hmm.
let's fix this. And this is how, this is the actual information. I don't think I've done that yet. But
I'll
if
be
I
I'll be chasing you
but
down. I'm going to go back
you
over your
you'll
posts
tell
now.
me first. I know. I'll be like, no, I don't know what I'm talking about. But
Excuse me,
yeah.
Miss Orla.
Uh yeah. I'll be like, oh crap, what I do. Yeah. So, but like,
But
yeah, that's important too. And to know
mm,
that, like, for me anyway, to know that, I'm not always right. I don't always have all the information. Like you said, to defer to somebody else. And that's
mm,
advocates supporting each other too,
yeah,
to
yeah,
say we must check with each other,
mhm,
to give the right information, and that we all work together as well,
yeah.
for everybody.
I think isn't that one of the really fortunate things that we have? We have a very strong advocate community, and I know we get criticized, we get slagged off, we get pulled apart by
Yeah.
certain areas, and that's fair enough. People are entitled to do that. That's okay. But doing it without understanding the community, I think, is difficult, because you know we faced enough sort of adversity and enough issues to get to the point where we're at. Most of us have gone through multiple surgeries, gone through a lot of trauma, we've got a lot of history behind us. Um, but what a lot of people don't realize is that we are a very tight knit community. We do talk, and most of us talk every day, if not to at least two or three other advocates, or at least to a group. And I think that's where, certainly key figures in the whole community have pulled a lot of that together over the years, like the likes
Mm.
of Nancy and Heather and that. And,
Yeah.
I think that's what's kept a lot of people going, a lot of people seeing as well too. And it always means that you can check in with what's going on. You can sort of see, what's happening in the world. And, we've got now like the likes of Sally and Dr. Andrea Vidali's
Yeah.
Endometriosis Summit. Like, what you wouldn't have given for that a few years ago. It's amazing. It's
Mm.
absolutely amazing. And, like, I've joined the virtual sessions, and I hope at someday that I might be able to get over to them.
Go there, I know.
We should do the Euro Millions or something if every week
Yeah.
to see, can we get there? We'll have everybody's surgery paid
Mexico.
for.
I
We'll just
know. Oh,
go.
stop.
Wouldn't it be great? But
Yeah.
something like that then is brilliant, and, like, again, accessible for people if they want to learn that wee bit more. Do you know? Because
Yeah.
look, bladder endometriosis is not for everybody, and thoracic endometriosis is not for everybody.
Yeah.
But there are some really good topics, that they're presented again, like around
Oh, it's
all
amazing. It's
aspects,
like,
like.
oh yeah, and it's everything, like, from across the world. Like, there's so many amazing
Mhm.
people there. So if you are, I mean, I know it, yeah, like you said, it's not for everybody. But you could learn so much at that.
Yeah.
It's incredible, and it's so worth it. Like, I can't even remember the price on it, but it's not crazy, and it's just
No.
so worth it. Like, I
Mhm.
remember listening back to recordings, and you could watch them. Like, I watched them a couple of times, some of them, like, it's incredible. It's like,
Mhm.
definitely, and you're getting that straight from specialists
Yeah.
and advocates, and it's incredible.
No, it's very good. And what's nice about it as well too is because it's, very independently driven as well too.
Yeah.
And again, coming from a real strong point of advocacy, Sally's amazing. There's no doubt
She's
about it. She is so driven, and she's pulled together a great team around her, like, which is fantastic. So,
yeah,
like, I'm looking forward to that one now in March as well next year. I think it's the
March, yeah,
8th, 7th, 8th of March, around that time. So, but
yeah.
yeah, I'll be sharing it out again anyway. Like, that's something to look forward to. Really
Yeah,
is,
I'm
like,
like, yeah, that's such a positive thing. You know what I mean? It's like so positive. I'm like, yes, like cheerlead for that
I
because
know.
it's incredible. Like, and
This
I
is
think it's
it.
just because, yeah, we don't have that in our, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We don't have anybody to do that for us. So when you see those things, those like super positive, informative, knowledgeable things with a,
Hmm.
bunch of heroes, really, you're just like, oh yeah, grab that information, grab
Yeah.
what's from that. And that, that keeps us going as well to say, okay, we can do more work for this and there's more we can learn and there's more we can do for people for the future for mostly because the people now just need to be treated and
Yeah.
we can only do what we can give them the tools to do that for now.
Hmm.
But yeah, sure, the hope would be to do something like that eventually, but
I know it's time to resurrect the
yeah.
the summits, like, for this side, like, that. So it
Oh,
would be
stop.
great to do something like that again. It really would. And I
Yeah.
think there is a huge gap for it as well. And I think too, from a clinical point of view, it'd be nice to see some clinical engagement,
Oh
with
yeah.
patients as well, and not on a fearful side where they can learn from us and they can learn from the group as well too. Like, so there's always
Yeah.
space for that.
Oh,
You know.
definitely. Yeah, and patient involvement and advocacy involvement, all of that. Like all of
Yeah.
that needs to be community involvement, and PPI, like we've spoken about that before, and
Hmm.
all clinicians and GPs and primary care levels, and all of them at all
Yeah.
levels,
Yeah.
that's that would be your hope to because that's the only way you can move forward or for everybody to fully understand each other,
Mhm, mhm.
Um that's the only way we can do that, I think.
And that's it. And I suppose just to wrap up the conversation, it's back to that sort of one line, isn't it? That it's like nothing
Yeah,
about us without us. And I
yeah.
think endometriosis is one of those things where really that should be the case because, again, so misunderstood, so much misinformation, and use the skills and the tools of the people that are there. I think that's very important. So
Very important. Yeah,
that's our way.
definitely.
Orla, thanks for chatting to me, like, that sort of way.
Oh,
And sure, look, we'll be back chatting again soon about the cross border directive in more
yeah.
detail.
All right.
And
Thanks for having me.
we'll have loads of questions, I'm sure, by then. Thank you
We
very
will.
much. Thank
All
you.
right, Kathleen. Thanks.